Hello,
Hello.
my man. What is up?
Uh, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, welcome to the to the stream, to everything. And I want to start off. I want to start off with just thanking you for all of your work and everything that's been, with everything, and letting me have the opportunity of coming on and playtesting TF2 Classic, and then being able to continuously enjoy it with everyone. It's been a wild ride, and it's great.
Yeah. Uh, thank you. uh, I don't know how to respond to that because I'm bad when it comes to responses, but
Groovy.
I don't think we'd even be here if it weren't for the team, obviously, not just me, because I'm a dickhead.
Control point enabled.
But I'm happy to have finally been able to get this out there and
Thanks,
have it
NBC,
in
for the
such a
follow.
state that
Appreciate it.
people seem to be enjoying it. But yeah, I've had a nice time just playtesting the mod with you and other beta testers.
Yeah. Well, that was really one of the first questions that I've had. Is what is your experience just with TF2 Classic in general, and with the beta, and with everybody, and how it is
Well,
working on it?
Before I joined the team, I primarily did like map work, even though it wasn't really like made for anything. Because when I first started mapping, I made like I guess you would call them trade maps, even though I just call them hub maps. So you can just essentially just a map you hang around on, and that's it. But around this time, I was also making Gmod art, which is how I actually came across Team Fortress 2 Classic, because the Deathmatch Mercenary model had been put on the Gary's Mod Workshop, and that's how I found out about the forums of Team Fortress 2 Classic. And from there, I read a lot about Face Punch and generally everything through the forums, and because of that, there was a document about a game mode called Espionage, and because of that game mode, I went into Hammer and spent like 2 months, in maximum, I guess, 2 months on a map called Office, which I posted heavily on the forums, and that brought me onto the team. But for the history, there's a lot of history when it comes to from 2016 to now, and there's been a lot. There's been a lot of history when it comes to this mod, both good and bad, but I don't know where to go from there, though.
Wow. I talked about it a little bit, but someday or sometime, I want to compile a big history list of TF2 Classic, and all it's been through, and different types of development eras that it went through. Just a lot of interesting different things. We got a question from chat that is, what's the plan for TF2C going forward? Any new game modes / weapons in the works?
We have a lot planned for the future. We have, we go over weapon concepts a lot between me and the person I work with, Trotem. When it comes to weapons, I don't want to say anything about any of them in terms of,
Yeah, that's fair.
because there's a chance that we could be testing a weapon, and then we find out, oh, this weapon doesn't work out how we want it, and then we have to scrap it. But we have a lot of weapon concepts that try to, I guess, either improve upon a class or try to make them more interesting to play. Like,
Groovy.
I'll try to go into some scrapped weapons. I'm trying to think of one.
Thank you for the follow.
Okay. So we had a
Appreciate
grenade
it.
launcher that essentially did more damage the more you did direct hits, essentially. But the downside was that whenever you missed, you lost like one head, I guess you'd call it in live TF2. Or you lost like one number counting towards your damage output. and that went up to 5, or it went to a maximum of 5, but it technically went over that to where you could actually store up a bunch of damage just by doing direct hit. But the issue with that was is that if you have a skilled player, that becomes a little problematic. But we do want to try to go back to that idea in some time, because
Hey, thanks for the follow.
that idea does
again.
have some promise,
Because
and we hadn't
Baja Berry
gone
Blast.
far enough to be like, oh, here's an actual way to properly fix this, because we had tested it for such a short while that we were just like, okay, let's just scrap it. But yeah, but as for game modes, we have a lot concept for game modes. There's about 5 game modes that we have written up for the future. One of which is Overpowered, which is essentially a versus Saxon Hale-like game mode, which involves, a whole team against one overpowered class. Essentially how that works is that we have a class called the Henchman. He's not in this update, or he'll be in a future update, but the Henchman is essentially a big hulking boss class that can take damage and deal damage like a I hate to say it, but like a boss. That's a very stupid way to say it, but it gets the point across, and plus it is very literal. But
Somebody.
yeah.
Sorry,
Oh, go ahead.
somebody was asking about if there was a versus Sexton Hale mode planned, and I was like, it might be. I didn't know what to say. I was like, might be surprised.
Yeah. And like the thing about Overpowered is that we don't want to replace versus Saxon Hale. I think that's something that people could misconstrue or whatever. I don't know the correct word for that, but that's probably the correct word, and I'm just overthinking it. But we don't want to replace it versus Saxon Hale or Freak Fortress. Essentially, we want to do our own, not our own take, but have our own version of it without having it to where it replaces versus Saxon Hale. So for one example, is that when it comes to Overpowered, whenever we have more bosses in the future, so more than one boss, we want to have certain bosses, or we want all bosses to have their own set of maps. So if you play on like Overpowered Ravine, let's say, you would only fight the Henchman, let's say. So, and then you'd only ever fight the Henchman on Ravine. And yeah, even if you were to play like 5 rounds, you would always play against the Henchman. But if you were to play on, I don't know, Overpowered Sawmill, I guess. I'm just using very basic names just to get the point across. But if you had if you had boss number 2, he would be in that map. But the thing that makes the reason that we have it to where bosses are selected to their own maps is because we want bosses to be very different from one another. So the Henchman would be the most familiar to versus Saxon Hale players in terms of how he works. But we do want to have him in such a way that's like, oh, he can actually do this and counter this class in this way? That's dope. Rather than something like his rage ability does stunning. We don't want to do something like that because that...
Yeah.
But there is ways that we want to have him do his rage ability and have him be countered, because there are ways to do that, and we have that written up. But yeah, so yeah, we do have a lot of game mode concepts and a lot of weapon concepts for the future.
It's exciting. Can't wait to hear about some of them.
You too?
Another question is, does the team plan to make an updated software or using a control client, a version control client, so you don't need to download the whole game again? And I think I know what the answer to this is going to be.
Well, here's the thing. Okay, so the mod released, today, it released in a full package. What's included in that package is a launcher and updater. So essentially, whenever we push out new updates or hot fixes or any kind of bug fixes, you'll essentially have to open up that launcher, and there will be 2 options: launch the game and then update the game. You'll generally know to update the game because there will be little lines that say, oh, here's a new update, and then there you go. So yeah, whenever new updates are available, all you have to do is just launch the launcher and then just press update, and there you go.
Easy. Let's scroll up and see if there's anything else. I guess I can keep asking a few questions. I had a few in my head that I wanted to ask, but I just like my brain is like drawing a blank right now, and I don't know why.
Take your time. I can be here all on.
So, here's one actually. Are there any interesting differences that the civilian went through during development? Like anything interesting you want to talk about in regards to like you tried something with them and it didn't work, or?
Yes, I want to go over that because that actually has some interesting history that I've actually wanted to go over. When it comes to the civilian, when we first added him, he was a very, very basic class. And so, he had his umbrella, he had 200 health, and he ran a speed between the soldier and the demo man. And, so for some reason, like, we had a thought of, like, oh, the civilian's very, very basic, and what if he dies a lot? What if he's on his own? The general kind of idea behind giving, like, the way for the civilian to defend himself was giving him a Derringer, which is it's a small little handgun that has 2 shots. We first started with a Derringer. It was powerful on its own, but it had 2 shots, so you had to use your shots very wisely. And believe it or not, when it comes to giving the civilian a ranged weapon, it comes down to the point where the civilian goes out of his way to shoot somebody rather than, sticking behind his teammates and, making sure that, he's not getting killed. So and this is a psychological thing. It's not a thing where it's like, oh, I can, I'm a good civilian player. I can ignore that. No, it even happened to me, even though I figured I wouldn't do that. But whenever you have that whenever you have like a weapon as the civilian, that's not the umbrella, it becomes a very you kind of lock yourself in because you think, oh, I have a gun. This is Team Fortress 2. I have to go out and kill somebody. But as an objective that needs to be protected in a game mode where he is the objective, that becomes very problematic in terms of actually trying to defend himself. Because he doesn't need to defend himself, is the thing. Because he has all of his teammates. And essentially, I'll get into that in a bit, but... So, then what we tried next was giving him a revolver. So like a snub nose, I guess. So it had 6 shots and it was powerful on its own, but instead of doing 2 shots, and that essentially led to the exact same problem. Then with that, we tried something a little bit more unique that people wouldn't really expect, I figure. We gave the civilian a building, which was essentially it was a briefcase, so it made sense for him to have a building. But essentially you would place it down, it would open up, and then it would actually outline every enemy in the area of the range of that building. We called it the radar.
Oh wow!
And it did that every 30 seconds, I think. But it didn't outline them for the whole match. It outlined them for a second, and then it faded away. And then it did that for every 30 seconds.
Wow!
And as interesting as this idea is, and as cool it is as it is in theory and like visually, there becomes an issue of like, oh, I'm a civilian. I have to place this very, very strategically for my team and for me as a civilian. So they kind of go out of their way to find a place in the map where it'd be most useful, but that can also lead into the civilian going out of his way to accidentally get killed, which generally, if you didn't have that building, you wouldn't be going around searching for places. And so after that, after we had scrapped both the weapon idea and the after we scrapped the radar, we tried going over a lot of ideas as to how to balance upon the civilian. One idea was giving him some armor. Now, in the sense that it's an armor pickup that you'd find in the map and equip it. This idea was never tested though, because it was kind of obvious that it would be very problematic. Because if you were to give the civilian some armor as a pickup, why wouldn't you just either heal him or give him more health? And essentially what the armor would have done was protect against 1 backstab, which isn't really what's needed, and then it would also protect against damage, which is it kind of goes against TF2's laws in some way, because with TFC, the reason that was scrapped is so that you actually have a mental image of how much health they have left. Whereas in TFC, if they have armor, you kind of can't figure that out because of how the armor does percentage, and then it blocks some of that damage for the actual health, and that's why that was scrapped. Then the same sort of applies with the civilian's vest. But then after that, we were trying to figure out how to basically make it so where teammates want to stick around the civilian, because when it comes to payload, you have a reason to stand around the payload. Primarily because it gives you ammo and health. And so we were like, okay, well, we don't want to make him a walking payload, because otherwise people are going to complain about that. And we tried to think of different ways to have that make sense without it being weird. And one thing, and that essentially arose to defense, and then after a while it also involved mini crits, which actually works very, very well, because if you have the defense boost, teammates are more reliant, or they're more drawn to wanting to stand around the civilian, because believe it or not, that 35 damage resistance does a lot, especially when it comes to headshots, because you can survive like most headshots when it comes to any class. So scouts generally want to stay around him, so they can't get killed. But then this also makes it to where the enemies actually want to kill the civilian before killing the other enemies. So it's a kind of feedback loop in between that. And then to also help with that, well, I'll get into something in a second, but so then after a while we were like, okay, we want to be able to have it to where more people want to stand around the civilian rather than just like, because like, what if you don't want the defense boost? Like, even though that's a big thing, we were like, you know what? Why don't we just make it to where he gives a raise to a certain class, and that way that ended up into turning into the morale boost, which you can just think of it as a raised, where he looks at someone, gives them a raise, and they have damage, or they have mini crit damage for 10 seconds. And essentially, since you're actually missing one player from your team most of the time, that mini crit actually kind of helps with that issue. And then laterwards, we were like, okay, as classes aren't spawning with the civilian's spawning on his own a lot of the time, and he doesn't have teammates to spawn with him sometimes. So what we've actually done is that whenever the civilian whenever people die after the civilian, they will all spawn with the civilian they'll all spawn with the civilian whenever the civilian spawn. And so a way to also help that was to actually give crits to the enemy on killing the civilian. It seems like a weird feedback loop, but it helps a lot in terms of, getting the civilian to have his bodyguards with him. Is that you kill the civilian, then you kill everybody around him, and then the civilian's back to having a team with him like he would at setup. So yeah, that's generally the most of designing the civilian. But then when it came to the speed, we actually tried making him stock speed, which did not really work that well, because if you were to play any class, you could not catch up with him unless you were a medic or a scout, which became very annoying. So we set him to demo man speed, which is actually how it is in TFC. And that essentially solved everything in terms of speed and so on.
Wow. I didn't expect that much. That's
there's been so much history when it came to designing the civilian over these 4 years.
That's awesome, and I'm glad it can finally be revealed.
Damn straight.
There's a few other questions. NBC asked a similar question that we had that you answered earlier about the future of the game, except he asked about stuff. Will there be more developer events so people can earn medals or stuff? And is there any sort of mapping competition?
Yes. I'll just say that. We want to have a mapping competition in the future to where mappers can make maps and then have them added into the game. And then, maybe there's one map before the update that couldn't make the contest. So basically, when it comes to the mapping contest, this is something we want to do, not soon, but it's something we want to do in the future. But we want to have it to where, it's not restricted to any kind of game mode. So you can have you can make a VIP map, you can make a domination map, you can make a CTF map. Hell, if you want to, you can make invade CTF and have that be a map that can be entered into the contest.
Wow.
And because we want, we want to give more leeway to mappers. We want them to we want them to go out when it comes to creating unique maps. Because when it comes to VIP, we wanted to make sure that it was obvious that all VIP maps play differently. Now they don't all have to, obviously, because we have two maps that work essentially the same: Harbor and Badwater, which have the same sort of gameplay where you have to capture point to point and then you get to the escape zone.
Mm-hmm.
Because then when it, hold on, I gotta wait for this notification to go away, otherwise I'm not gonna be able to say much. Okay, so because I'm on phone right now. So yeah, when we were making VIP, we wanted to make sure that mappers wanted to make more unique VIP maps. Because that's why we have Train Yard, which is where if the civilian dies, red team wins, and then it's a smaller map, but the game plays a lot faster. And then when it came to Mindside, we essentially got the person who made the original Mindside for 1.9, because I was actually really big into that idea. And we brought it into an actual proper playable map that's a lot smaller than original Mindside, because original Mindside's fucking huge.
Oh
But-
yeah, I've played it. It's massive.
Yeah.
It is nostalgic though. It's great.
Yeah. So we wanted to make sure that gameplay felt nice when it comes to VIP. But yeah, we want that to apply to really anything. So you can make a domination map that uses, flags instead of capture points, or have a domination map that involves killing teammates. But we want to be able to have more creativity when it comes from mappers. That way we can have more unique experiences. Because with live TF2, there are no official invade CTF. There's no official neutral CTF maps. I mean, technically special delivery counts, but you get what I mean.
Yeah.
And hell,
yeah.
you could make a special delivery map and it could make it in. But with that said, when it comes to the winners of the contest, we don't want one person to win. We want the top 3 mappers to win. In top 1, 2, and 3, third place, second place, and first place. So that way, there's more incentive to make maps. And then if there's a map that doesn't make the cut before the contest, then we can actually add that in as an extra map for that update. But yeah, we really want to do a map contest in the future that involves community feedback and getting those kind of maps into TF2C.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'm sure a lot of people will want to enter. I had a few people ask about the mapping competition, saying that they would enter. So that's going to be really exciting, seeing all the new creations that the community can come up with.
Yeah, of course.
Will the civilian get any new melee weapons or perks? Is another question.
When it comes to the civilian, we don't want to give him any special weapons because the reason behind that is because if you give him an umbrella that does, let's say, less damage, but it gives him more defense, that kind of makes rounds inconsistent than they already are when it comes to classes and loadouts. Especially since he's the objective. You want him to play the same all the fucking time But there is something we want to try in the future, which is different VIP players, or different VIP classes, my bad, that have different abilities that are tied to that class rather than the civilian, or rather than changing the civilian. And then they would be tied to their own maps. And that's essentially how we'd want to handle that kind of thing. Because when it comes to special classes, which is essentially all classes that we'll add in the future, we don't want them to have a loadout system, primarily because again we don't want there to be weird situations where you're playing overpowered and for some reason his arms can shoot rockets or some shit. But so yeah, we want to make sure that for the objective class that it's always consistent.
Yeah, that makes sense. Couple questions. What was the team's biggest challenge as far as managing the community? And following up on that, did the community's reaction to the various delays directly impact development at all?
I guess the hardest thing we had to come over was the I guess the split of deathmatch. I know a lot of people on my team had serious issues with that, and there were issues. There were a fair amount of people that didn't like the change, and they had their right to feel so. And then there were people that worked off of and split into the other team. But when it comes to anything further than that, there wasn't anything huge. When it comes to before deathmatch split, the main problem we had was finding an animator who wanted to actually work on the deathmatch mercenary at the time, because you have so many weapons in that deathmatch mode to where it's like, man, we got to make so many animations for these unique weapons that need to hold in a certain way. And obviously I'm not going to get more into that, but that's one of the hurdles that we had to deal with when it comes to the deathmatch area. But for the Team Fortress 2 era, or the current era, Team Fortress 2 Classic, I can't say that there were hardships when it comes to getting from here to there, aside from just having to deal with certain bugs and having to fix those bugs and, you know, fixing certain things that we figure we wouldn't be able to get over, but we have. And when it comes to the delays, the delays did cause, you know, some stress within the team. It always did. No matter how many times we delayed, it was always a stress on us. Because you'd have, you know, we'd get people DMing us or in our public Discord, and they come to us and they start yelling at us for having missed a due date. Because here's the thing: when it comes to release, a lot of us on this team haven't even, you know, we never released a project before. A lot of us haven't, especially me, because again, this is my first time on an actual team, and it's kind of, I mean, it is still surprising to me that I'm the project lead, but because when I first started on this team, I was a nobody, and technically I still am, and that's fine. But when it came to, you know, having to deal with all these delays, you know, there's the original ones from 2016 where we thought, oh, we can release now. I mean, we can release soon because, you know, we have this animator and we can do all this stuff in deathmatch and get all these animations done and all this stuff done. But then that would constantly get piled on because we have to keep doing other stuff and other maps. But back to the delays of recent years, it's like, yeah, we've dealt with a lot of stress when it comes to the delays, because like we want it, like they're like, it's not like a thing where we're like making up the update like release. That was never the thing, because when it came to the original delay, or one of the original delays when it comes to last year, we thought we'd be able to make that July that release date. But when it came around, we kind of noticed that, like, you know, there were certain things that weren't done, some game modes, like some stuff just wasn't finished. And then when it came into like, and plus we couldn't release then anyway because we didn't have anything for the update pages. We didn't have any art, we didn't have any writing, we didn't have anything ready by then. We didn't even have it started in July, but we thought we didn't have it. Yeah. So before that point, we made that Q2 release date of 2019 because we thought we'd be able to make that, because we made that back in 2018 of December, which was when Black Mesa announced their release window, and we thought, okay, maybe we could also make that time. And so once we got there, we were like, shit, well, we got to delay this further. And when it came to around the other delay, when it came to 2019, like, we had just started on the update pages. Like, we had been working on the update pages, me and Massimo, like the art of the update pages, because the update pages they started with art. Like, we wanted to get the art done before we had to start on the website. And that's a common misconception that, you know, maybe we didn't get out there that well enough. And I don't blame anyone for, you know, feeling that we misinterpreted that in some way. But from August to January 2020, that's when we were working on the art and the writing and everything for that update page. Everything you see in those update pages were done within those months, from August to January. And, you know, when it came to January, we thought, okay, we'll just get our web developer and we'll get this stuff done out because it's, you know, it's not even that much. And the thing is, we didn't have the foresight when we were starting the art to tell the website person that like, oh yeah, we're gonna have an update page. And the reason that happened is because we don't talk to our web developer that much because he has a very busy life, and that's something else that people don't tend to understand. So we didn't think of actually having to ask him. We kind of just figured, oh, we can message him after we get the art done, and that just kind of comes with the trade. Whenever you're working on a project, you kind of have to learn these mistakes you made to move on with the future. But when it came to January, he was like, okay, I don't know if I'll be able to make that, but let's just aim for February. And we thought we'd be able to make February, like the middle of February. And then when we got there, we were like, okay, well, maybe we can get it in March. And then that happened, and then it kept doing that because we were waiting on the website. And I know that there's a lot of conspiracy theories that think like, oh no, they had more stuff to do in this timeline. No, when it came to the delay from January, we were waiting on the website to get finished. And obviously, that's not me pointing any fingers at our web developer. He had a very stressful life at this point because he has a lot of family issues and so on. And then when March rolled around, there was COVID-19, and I'm sure people are going to be like, oh, don't make that as an excuse, but it is. Here's the thing that people don't understand when it comes to COVID-19, because they don't tend to listen or whatever. While a lot of people are at home and working from home, there are certain people that cannot work from home, such as construction workers, nurses, doctors, so on and so forth. And our web developer is one of these people. Like he's not like they're not a web developer as a job. They don't have a web developer job. They work, in these essential worker environments, so they have to work more days. And they also work from like morning to like 7:00 p.m. So by the time he gets home, he can't do anything. Like he would just rather sleep, and I don't blame him, because again, this is a passion project. We're not getting paid for this. We're not. There's no end goal for us aside from having the community be happy for playing the mod. So yeah, when it came to that, it's like people were yelling at us a lot, like not just like one person, but like a lot of people, like to the point where it kind of got depressing, to the point where people were like having doubt in us, and rightfully so, because they haven't seen anything from the mod at that point, because we wanted to keep it all a big surprise for what was in the update. And that's how it's been for all of development, because we wanted to keep like a lot of the things that we worked on a mystery, because we want it to be like live TF2, to where like, oh, well, there's a cool new game mode in this update when it comes to like live TF2, and we wanted that same feeling when it came to working on these update pages. That's why we felt these update pages and the website were so important, because we didn't want to just put out a download link and just be like, here it is, guys, and then that be it, and people have to learn what's in the mod for themselves, rather than going to a website and going through the update pages to see what there is.
Thank you, Tech Mech, for the follow.
So we had to deal with that for a very long time, from August primarily to now. But that's essentially how we felt when it comes to delays and all that kind of stuff.
Wow. And I must say, the update page, I think the update page was worth the wait. It's gorgeous. All of the art and all the paint-overs are really beautiful looking.
Yeah, Nasimo did a very fucking great job with everything on this update page when it comes to painting over, and because a lot of the renders are made by me, and that's not me, plugging myself. That's just me saying that, because I had like a lot to do with both the writing and a lot of the art, like the SFM art. The only piece of source filmmaker art that I didn't do was Day 2's header, which is the scout and the demo man in the warehouse. The only thing I did for that day was I did the map, and I did a few pose adjustments to Nasimo's poster. But aside from that, that's primarily all Nasimo. But Nasimo did a very great job when it comes to getting the shading, the cloth folds on certain things, and just generally painting over everything, and so on and so forth. I didn't expect it to look so good when we got it finished, but yeah, I'm super proud in the update pages, and I'm glad that people feel that it's worth the wait because of what they've seen.
Yeah. Oh, I don't even know how to pronounce the name of the person that just followed me. Thank you, Scrungo Fan. Bump map.
Huh?
Oh, it's bump map!
Oh, hey, Bump.
Bugger. Sir Suspect in chat says, I do just want to say I'm seriously impressed by the sheer amount of polish this update has. You've clearly poured your heart into this project and it has been more worth the wait. Thank you guys.
Thank you for playing the game. That's all I can really say, because that's all we've ever really wanted for this project. Because for me, the Team Fortress 2 Classic is always what I've had in the back of my head since I've been playing Team Fortress 2 in some way. Because I knew that, like, oh, you know, I mean, not like in the sense that, like, we get like a mod like Team Fortress 2 Classic, because I never expected that there would ever be Team Fortress 2 source mods. I never expected that when I was younger. But when it comes to the general idea of a community version of Team Fortress 2, this is always what I've imagined. And then throughout the years, I've always noticed like stuff like, you know, weird view model animations, or this or that, or like model issues. And I've accumulated this in my brain, and a lot of us on our team have noticed these kind of things, and we've set out to fix a lot of that kind of stuff. Like the player gibs are all beta textures, and we were like, you know what, let's just fix those up and have them consistent. And Hecates did a very good job with having the TIP textures and doing the blood perfectly. Because Hecates is Hecates is a great TF2 blood artist. I guess that's the way to say it. And then Insane Aside made the jiggle bones on the gibs, which essentially the reason we have it as jiggle bones is because you can't have ragdolls as gibs, so jiggle bones were the next best option. But yeah, we wanted to make sure that this was, I guess, because like, I don't know how to explain it, because like there's so many options in Team Fortress 2 Classic that we don't want it to be like, oh, it's just a mod that you'll play for a few minutes and then that's it. We wanted there to be a lot of options for Team Fortress 2 Classic, especially for like if you want 2007 servers, because that was a previous thing that was in Team Fortress 2 Classic that I was fine with keeping. Because there's a lot of people that would rather experience the original 2007, you know, era, and we have that, and we also have it to where you can play that experience, but on new game modes, to where if you want to play stock payload, which is entirely possible. But yeah, I'm extremely happy to where we've gotten with this mod, and I'm happy that people figure it's worth the wait, despite us having been here for 4 years.
Oh, I had one specific thing I wanted to ask, and now my drawing a blank. That was like, oh my god. I was like thinking about it. Oh shoot.
Did it have to do with maps or models or?
Oh god.
Or like
Brain fart.
animations or?
Yeah, give me a minute. It's like a loading screen in my brain right now. It's like not
Take your time.
Not processing. Oh gosh. It's just.
See this? Yeah, this is why you gotta write stuff down.
I do have to write stuff down. I was gonna do it, and then I woke up this morning and I was like, oh, can't wait to stream and play TF2 Classic. Just gotta get my list of questions I want to ask. Oh.
But yeah, take your time.
Yeah, I don't know. I might spitball a bit here and just say that it's just so great to finally be able to just play this with people, and I think everybody's enjoying it. Oh, I know what question I was gonna ask. And this one is a big. This one's a big one, and it's kind of more of an what is your opinion than a question.
Mm-hmm.
But do you think TF2 Classic is ever going to replace live TF2 in the way of people would rather go to that to avoid hackers or, you know, a less interesting experience or a more polished experience? Do you think that they would rather go to TF2C than live TF2?
In some kind of weird way, I don't want Team Fortress 2 Classic to replace live TF2. I really don't. And that's not me faking out words. That's me being honest. Because Team Fortress 2, you know, actually has a very large place in my heart when it comes to. Because if it didn't, I wouldn't be here. But I've been an avid TF2 player since 2012, and in some sense, Team Fortress 2 Classic is for me to relive the years I missed in some way. But when it comes to oh, can you repeat the question because my brain blanked out?
Just like in terms of polish or in terms of having a better play experience, do you think
Oh,
TF2C is gonna replace it?
Right. My bad.
It's fine.
When it comes, but yeah, I don't. It's like I want people to still play live TF2. I don't want us to be, replacing live TF2. Especially, I don't want to get on Valve's bad side, especially. But that's not the core thing that's like keeping me from saying that kind of thing. But it's like, it's the reason why we don't want to port more Team Fortress 2 weapons. Like we don't want to add the, here's the thing. When it comes to the gunslinger is a perfect weapon. Even though, like, people kind of hate playing against it. But it gets the engineer out of his role, it makes him more offensive, it allows him to build more on the battlefield and be more with his team, to the point where it's like, that's a perfect weapon. Now, maybe there's some stat changes that could be done to it, but the general overall idea is perfect, and it stops engineers from camping, ironically. Mm-hmm. But, as much as that said, is that we don't want to add the gunslinger, primarily because we don't want to be adding more live TF2 weapons. We'd rather be making our own weapons. Because there's no fun in porting a weapon and be like, okay, let's test it. Alright, we already know how it plays, so never mind, let's not play test it. Whereas when it comes to, say, I don't know, I'm trying to think. Let's say I want a melee weapon for the pyro that, I don't know. I'm drawing a blank when it comes to that kind of thing, but when it comes to like a new pyro melee, we want to be able to test that extensively through everything. We want to be like, okay, this is what's good, this is what's bad, this is what solves the pyro's abilities, and this is what breaks him in a way. This is unfun to play as, in unfun to play against, and this is fun to use, and so on and so forth. We want to always kind of have that kind of brainstorm when it comes to working on weapons, because otherwise it's not going to be any fun just porting a weapon and being like, okay, there's the ported weapon, now let's go on and do something else. But yeah, I really don't want Team Fortress 2 Classic to replace Live TF2. I really hope that Valve figures out this bot stuff. I haven't played Live TF2 in so long because I've had my head so deep in Team Fortress 2 Classic. But I really hope that they get this bot thing figured out, and I hope they are able to essentially recover from this, and I hope that in the future they can make more major updates. Even though people will be very pessimistic about that, or they have no faith in Valve nowadays, as like that's no reason for me to feel any different, because like, again, this game is very special to me, and it would be very, I mean, the idea of Team Fortress 2 being dead it does bring down some sad effects in my mind, but I don't want Team Fortress 2 Classic being the thing that's like, oh, this is the thing that killed Team Fortress 2. I don't want that. I just want people to enjoy this for what it is, and still want reason to go back to Live TF2.
Yeah. Interesting. Chat, you got any more questions? Any more?
And just a subtopic. I also don't want to replace other mods. I don't want to replace, if they're, when it comes to Versus Action Hail, I don't want to replace Versus Action Hail. We want to do Overpowered, but we don't want to do it in such a way that people are like, oh yeah, let's do that instead. Let's play that instead. And then, and I don't like seeing Team Fortress 2 Classic as a better source mod than any other source mod. I'm very proud of Team Fortress 2 Classic, but in my mind, I don't see it any better than any other source mod, because there are other people that are doing very great stuff with their source mods.
Sir Suspect asks, what's it like to work with Valve News Network?
Ooh. I don't know if I want to go into that, because there's a lot of stuff that involves from that, because when we first told him that we're like, oh, we're gonna release soon, back when we were delaying the update, he was very kind to us. He was like, oh sure, I can get some stuff together and we can get this out. And I was like, okay, cool. Then throughout the months, it became an issue of kind of, we were keeping our heads in the dirt when it came to TF2 Classic not in the sense that we weren't doing anything, but in the sense that we were working very hard on Team Fortress 2 Classic and getting a lot of stuff done. And, I would occasionally, because Tyler talks to me. He doesn't talk to my team. He doesn't talk to anybody else. He talks to me primarily.
Hey, another interesting question from Chad, and this is something I didn't even think of. But, will TF2C ever go open source similar to how the B4 source code was put up on GitHub? Uh-oh. I think Drud's internet might have died. Might be having some technical difficulties. Uh-oh. Yeah, I didn't want to ask that question because I didn't think he was done because he, like, cut off so suddenly. And I was like, are you done with that? I'm project lead now. Alright, my first official decision of project lead is that civilian is no longer British. I am no longer project lead. I'm sure Drud will be back in a minute or two. There's a green circle around Drudly's, Uh-oh. Oh, he just disconnected. Uh-oh. Yeah, I love 3Clicks' music. A lot of it's in the background. I wish I could easily find more of his music, because it's really hard to find the music he uses in his background.
I'm sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
There we go. He's back. Welcome
What was
back.
the last thing I said?
I remember you saying something, and then you, like, abruptly cut off, and I thought you were done talking.
No, what was the last thing I said, if you remember, if the chat remembers?
Chat, you remember? I remember you said something along the lines of, like, oh, God. You talked about how... oh, you said, yeah, Tyler only talks to you, and nobody else on the team, and then you cut off.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
basically, but yeah, Tyler talks to just me, so if he's ever said the team, he means me. But yeah, there were, like, in the beginning, he'd be very nice to us. He'd be like, we'd be like, okay, we think we can ship soon. And he'd be like, okay, cool. I'll have a report ready by then, and so on and so forth. And then that time would arrive, and he'd be like, is this ready yet? And I'd be like, sorry, we're having to start on the websites. And he's like, okay, well, I mean, didn't you start on the websites, so on and so forth? And I'd have to be like, I'd talk to him truthfully, because otherwise what's the point of working on something if you're just going to lie to people? But, so, after a few months of all these delays, he would kind of get more pessimistic with us, to where he was kind of getting snarky with how we worked. Because, like, this is a source mod, this is a passion project. We don't work on this as a job. Some of us aren't even here 24/7. Some of us can't even be here on a weekly basis because of certain things, or, so on and so forth. That's kind of something else that people don't kind of account for, because, we're just a bunch of dudes working on a source mod, and that's it. But I think Tyler may have a different kind of view on that kind of thing, but I don't, that's not me complaining. That's not me being like, whatever. But generally when it comes to that sort of thing, it's like, yeah, it's like he was snarky to us, but on the other side, he has every right to be, because of how long we've taken, and in some sense, I'm sure that I've quote unquote dragged my feet. I'm sure I have, because I know I'm not great. I'm not the greatest person in the fucking world. I know I'm lazy, but with that said, it's like, this is a source mod. It's like things happen and we delay, and there is good to come out of that delay from January to now. Is that when we delayed, like, there was a lot of stuff we were like, okay, well, we got to get this finished before release, or
so on and so forth. Because in January we didn't have 14 payload race support at all. So I mean, we did have the triggers and whatnot, and the things to make that stuff work, but we didn't have a HUD. We didn't have certain things like the spy being able to get health from like dispensers on the payload and stuff like that. So throughout those months, we were just working hard and making sure that everything's working, everything looks great, and so on and so forth. And we even took that time to. There was something else that we finished that I can't remember. There was something that we wanted to finish and finally got around to fixing, like late into development, but I can't remember what it was. But
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
It's not a weapon. It might have been like. I'm not sure, but case in point, there's a lot that happens in development, and everyone has the right to be angry at us for having taken so long, because they have every right to be angry, because we had said so many times, but it's a learning experience for us. You know, we have to have that kick in the ass to know, hey, you know, maybe we should be doing this differently or so on, because, you know, there are times where a lot of us need a kick in the ass, and there you go. But yeah, that's kind of how it was with dealing with Tyler at that time.
And somebody asked a really good question, but I have to scroll up a bit to find it. It's, will TF2C ever go open source similar to how the B4 source code was put up on GitHub?
The thing about that is that a lot of previous developers had worked on TF2 Classic, like Nick9 and Pistominer, but you know, they don't want their code being distributed for their own reasons, and that's perfectly fine. I have the right to respect that, and we will not become open source in any time in the future. It will always be closed source. As much as I know people feel differently about that, or they'll, you know, be angry that we're not open source, but that's just how it is, and we don't plan to go open source.
That's fair enough. Piston Miner. That name, I hear that name a lot in the Paper Mario modding community nowadays.
Yeah, I know. The only thing I know, what I know from that is that his avatar is of a Paper Mario character, or a character in the style of Paper Mario. But Piston Miner's a very, very fucking sweet guy, and he gets a lot more shit in the past than he rightfully deserved, because the way he types the way he typed in the past was like, he would type very bluntly, like I do, and that might be where I get some of, you know, my assholeness that people think that I have. And you know, yeah, there are times where I'm an asshole, but you know, Piston Miner would type in a very blunt way. But then, like, when I got to know him, there was situations where he would say something, and I would just get thrown for a loop because I didn't expect that out of him. Because I was taught, like, a few years back, we were getting wood for our house to keep the house warm during the winter, and we were just talking in VC, and he was like, he typed in chat like, don't forget to soak your wood and like your log in woods, or like something like that. And I was like, what'd you say? And then he repeated the exact same thing with no changes. And I'm pretty sure he was doing it on purpose, because he wouldn't say something like that. But yeah, Piston Miner's a really great guy, and he got a lot more shit than he deserved, because he's got some great morals.
I only ask because every once in a while I look into the Paper Mario stuff, and I see his name credited on a bunch of stuff, so I don't know, he's going places.
Well, I'm glad he's working on stuff that he enjoys, because I know that the last time he was on our team, he wasn't treated the best. And I'm glad that he's working on stuff that he wants to work on. And if he'd like to come back in the future, I would love for that. We have a much calmer team. I'm sure that people think that we have a very weird internal like dev team, but no, everyone is like, there is no drama that happens inside of the team at all. It's because like we all just work on it, and we work calmly. No, I've never seen anyone like, there was one time, obviously, from 2017 where we had to kick off a member, but aside from that, it's like, you know, the team's been very peaceful, and everyone's had their part in this mod, and you know, but obviously that's for Piston to decide in the future. But I'm not gonna make him work on anything because he's told me his opinions on joining back, and those are his feelings, and he has the right to feel those, and I don't have any right to tell him otherwise, and I'm just happy for him, I guess I can say.
Any chance espionage will be returned to either officially, or did the compatibility issues kill it?
The issue when it comes to espionage, we've answered this in our FAQ. When it comes to espionage, espionage has the same issues as deathmatch. To where the thing about Team Fortress is that you have 9 classes, you have 2 teams, or in our case 4 teams in certain cases. That's where all of Team Fortress 2's style comes from, and that's not me saying that other mods have to abide by that rule. Especially something like Open Fortress. Like Open Fortress can easily do that, and they do it fine. You know, and it's their mod. That's what they decide. That's not for us to decide. But when it comes to making espionage, there's so much weird about espionage. Like the fact that you have 4 classes on one team and 1 class on another team. Now that makes sense in the game in its own kind of way. But in Team Fortress, it's like, okay, well, can I play as the heavy? No. Can I play as the engineer? No. That's kind of the issue that arises from there, to the point where it becomes its own game when we want people to be playing, you know, Team Fortress 2 Classic for Team Fortress 2 Classic. But because if you don't know what espionage is essentially TF2 version of Trouble in Terrorist Town from Gary's mod, and that's essentially so there was one team that had the guard, the janitor, the office worker, and the scientist. And then the other team had the agent, and it was the agent's job to kill them all, and it was the other team's job to essentially run down the timer to win. And then there would be like weapons that you grab across the map or from a weapons locker. But the issue that arises in Team Fortress 2 Classic is that one, you get rid of those classes, and 2, espionage demands a lot of stuff that would screw up a lot of stuff when it comes to the base game. So, for example, there's a concept where every single class has a hands weapon to where they can pick up stuff like you do in Half-Life 2. But that would become an issue elsewhere because, maybe there'd be a bug that allows you to, transfer from one map to another and you can still pick up things or whatever. And, there's so much there. And also, espionage has, like, different types of flags, different types of all this kind of stuff that we kind of can't risk it. Now, for the models of espionage, they are still being worked on. I've seen progress of them. They might have stalled for a while. I don't know when they'll be getting traction again because I know they don't have textures. I know that they're all modeled. I don't think they have rigging or facial flexes yet. I'm pretty sure they're just meshes and that's it. But all of them are done, I think, because the janitor's done, the scientist is done. Aside from the scientist is the most done out of the ones that are not done, but the scientist does not have facial flexes, but he does have rigging. But when it comes to the guard, the agent, and the office worker, they're all in the same kind of state. But we do want to release those in the future because we know, like, personally, I know that, people would want to use that in a machinima, or they want to use it for, SFM posters or Gary's mod posters. And, as a person that came from Gary's mod, when it comes to making art, I would want to be in their case to where I'd want those models, and I don't blame them for wanting them. But obviously, they'll be released when they're released. But in terms of us using those models, I don't want to go too much into that. But we do plan to use some of the classes from Espionage's concept in the future. I'm just. Okay, there we go.
So,
okay, there you go.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm making sure that I didn't disconnect again. Don't worry.
No, that's fine. I'm just, yeah. I just realized how short Civ is. Someone said.
Yeah, the civilian. Yeah, that's one of the design choices behind making the civilian originally. Because here's the thing about the civilian: the civilian was not made for Team Fortress 2 Classic. He was made for a server mod for TF2, like live TF2, that essentially was what we came out with. But they had a lot more different gameplay design than we did. But it was called the civilian mod, and there's still a Steam group of it. And you can see all the progress of how far they got, and we used some of that to be like, okay, this is what makes sense, this is what does not. But when that civilian mod was like left to the dust in late 2014, so then Team Fortress 2 Classic was made, and they were like, oh, let's reuse that civilian model for this, and we can use it for that, and we can ship it out in the future whenever we have VAP. But they released it a lot earlier than VAP came out, obviously. But yeah. So yeah, the civilian is designed to be short. He's designed to be very, very distinct from every other class, like how the normal classes are, and how you can distinguish the scout from the heavy. And thanks to the civilian's very short size, it gets a lot across. Like one, he's very important because of his suit and his general kind of, I guess, Winston Churchill appeal, even though that's not really a good example, but yeah, from his short, kind of stance in the way his face is detailed, it makes him look a lot more scared than most of the other classes. Even though, even in his default face, he's frowning, though every class is frowning. So I guess that's not a good example, but his silhouette gets the point across of, okay, I can hide behind enemies better, like how medics can hide behind heavies because heavies are a lot bigger of a class. And, he has a smaller head than the rest of his body, so he's easier to body shot, but he's a little bit harder to headshot due to his shorter size. So yeah, the civilian is a very expertly well-crafted character, both design-wise and gameplay-wise, even though I don't like bragging about how our gameplay is.
I think a lot of people would agree that it plays really well.
Yeah, as long as you're not playing a 64-player server on, Train Yard.
Oh yeah, I set the limit to 32, and even then I think 32's, a lot. We were playing Mindside and Harbor and Train Yard, and the chaos.
Yeah.
Oh, the chaos.
And obviously with that, it's when it came to playtesting VIP, we played with maximum 12 players, so there were 6 people on each team. And I mean, we obviously played more than that. That's just that's an average number. That's the average number between min and max, where we have 12. But I didn't expect that to for more red wins than there are blue wins. But obviously players are going to have to get used to playing as a civilian, because there's a learning curve to playing the civilian, and that's something that people have to get used to. But yeah.
And, oh, we have my personal favorite question so far. Where's the bathroom?
I can't help you with that one. I mean, I have one in my house. I have one at,
That's a shame. Sorry to hear that.
Yeah. It's quite depressing having one.
Are there any plans to add something like a workshop in the future?
Generally, at the moment, when it comes to weapons, it's kind of hard to deal with weapon models for a workshop, because we don't make weapons based off of models. That's a very bad way of designing weapons, because essentially when it comes to designing weapons, you want to make the idea before you actually map it out. Because let's say because here's the thing, when it comes, let's give 2 different examples. So one example is I go to the SFM workshop. I mean, not SFM workshop, TF2 workshop, and I look for scout weapons, and I see one that's a chain bat, like the one SVDL, or maybe it's not SVDL. I can't remember who made that model. It might be Sexy Robot, but I can't remember. But essentially, if we wanted to use that model, let's let's talk to the person, ask for permission, and then we bring it into the game. And there becomes an issue where, you know, we're kind of breaking something right there. We're like, okay, you know, let's get this model and use it in the future, or use it like for this update. But there's an issue right there is that, okay, what if this weapon doesn't work out? What happens then? Then you have to scrap the model, and then you have to tell, you know, the person that you got it from, they're like, hey, we can't use this because we did the thing wrong. And then the second way to do it is to be like, okay, here's a scout, and, you know, let's say the scout, I'm trying to think, because, like, you know, let's do an obvious example. I'm gonna use something from the TF2 open beta, or I don't know when Valve tested this, but the backpack item for the scout. So what this does is that it allows the scout to go out of his way to help his teammates because he's a scout. So he can go out and grab a med kit and then come back to a teammate or find a teammate and either give them ammo or health. But the issue there is that the scout can easily just spam, you know, stealing these items. So he can exploit this to where, you know, there's a medkit on the ground. Uh-oh, there's a person on fire coming my way. Let me just steal that medkit so he can't have it, and then I'll just run away. That's an issue with the backpack. And another issue is that let's say you have it to where, you know, the scout has to hold it out like he's forced to hold it. So he's forced to hold the backpack and cannot switch to any other weapon. That becomes problematic because as a scout, you're primarily wanting to do the objective. That's what the scout's main role is to do. And basically, if you're distracting him with medkits and going out of his way to help other teammates, then you're essentially allowing for less time for the scout to be doing his objective when, you know, medics and engineers can be doing that exact same thing. And the way Valve fixed this was by inventing the sandwich, which, you know, isn't very documented very well, but it comes down to common sense due to how both things work. They can both be given to teammates, and they both, you know, do health. But the sandwich solves it in that you have it on you at all times. When you spawn, you have it right with you. You don't have to go out and find it. You have it on you instantly. And plus, the heavy is a slower class, so it allows the heavy to go around the map wherever he pleases, and, you know, he doesn't have to work. Like, if he drops the sandwich, he can go easily find a medkit and pick it back up, and that kind of thing. And plus, it does a better job of like, oh, I have it readily available, so here's my sandwich, and there you go. That's essentially how we design weapons. We don't base it off weapon models. That's why choosing workshop weapons becomes a very problematic issue. Now, let's say we have a weapon concept that's written out and we don't know what to give it, and somehow, you know, somebody in the workshop makes a weapon that we really want. That's the best case scenario, but there's more situations where that doesn't happen. Now, on the other hand of maps, we do the only place we currently have maps being hosted is our Discord and Game Banana whenever we get that updated, because we have to update that soon to be more accurate to what we're currently working on. But when it comes to mapping, we want to add more maps. We want to be able to find mappers that have made great maps, and we want to, you know, include their content into games. But as for an actual workshop, I wouldn't expect one for now. If we ever figure out that we should have one on the website in the future, then we'll consider it. But for the time being, we can't really make a workshop in soon. So for the time being, maps will have to be hosted on games, because I'm gonna constantly be looking on Game Banana and all these other places where these maps are hosted. And, you know, if I see something that's worth looking into, I'll look into it, and we can see about adding it in the future. But that's essentially how it works currently.
I think... I don't know. I guess maybe one or two last questions, Chad, if you have anything.
Yeah, that's fine.
Or we can cut it off here. It's, you know, it's up to
Totally up to
how
you.
many questions we get.
Yeah, I don't mind.
Yeah, it's really interesting going through a lot of the things that have been talked about, like all of Civilian's designs.
Yeah, there's a lot of history within Team Fortress 2 Classic's development that is very interesting, and then there's a lot of stuff that's not that interesting. But yeah.
Drud, what is your absolute favorite part of the development process?
Trying out new things, I guess, because like when it comes to weapons, because we're always talking about weapon ideas, like concepts, and whenever we're able to make like a new weapon or a new game mode, I'm on that instantly. That's kind of one of my favorite parts, is being able to test that out and being able to have that function in a way where it's like, damn, this is actually pretty fun to use. That's probably my favorite part of development, is just, you know, the ability to create stuff and have stuff working in such a way that it's like, oh, we can actually keep this item, or we can actually keep this game mode. That's most likely my favorite thing about development.
Awesome. It always is fun, like seeing new things just work.
Yeah. Okay, and here's another thing about weapon design. We never know when a concept is going to work. Like, whenever we concept it out, we can never like predict how it's going to affect gameplay or what its pros might be, because there's a lot of like consequences that might come with a certain weapon. And so that's kind of the fun of adding new weapons, but there's also the issue of like, oh, we have to scrap these stats now. But that's better than having to scrap a model. But yeah, it's like, we don't know that the stats are going to be good. We don't know that they're going to be bad. They can be like, the stats can sound really simple, but they can come out very well.
Little things can have big implications.
Yeah. That's just called the civilian.
He does. That little boost, those mini crits can save your life, I'm telling you.
Yeah. So can that defense boost if you're around the civilian.
That's true.
In other words, stand around the civilian more. It actually helps you.
It might give you some extra
chat.
money. And then on the flip side, what is your least favorite part of development?
I'm trying to think, because like, there's the obvious answer, and that's external drama. That sucks. I don't like ever dealing with that. That's always the worst shit to deal with. But in terms of actually inside the mod, one of the worst things is having a bug and not knowing where the fuck it's coming from or how the fuck it's happening. That's the worst for me. But you know, there's other stuff that sucks. Like, oh, here's a very interesting weapon, but no one likes it. No one likes using it, but it has a very interesting concept to it, and it makes this class play a lot differently. Now, that is justified a lot of the time, but then there's other times where it's like, damn, we thought this thing was gonna work, but it came out to the point where it sucks and nobody likes it. That's one of the also bad things that we don't like dealing with. And then there's also the implication of having something scrapped entirely. That sucks. Because that's how it happened with VIP a lot of the time. We were just like, oh, VIP is not going to work. But I was adamant enough to keep the team to be like, no, this can work. As like, you don't have to keep standing away from it and being like, oh, payload is the better option. It's like, no, payload and VIP are very different in their own manner. Even if, because like, yes, the idea is very simple. You escort this one class and you go to the end of the map, but
Drudly, you there? Uh-oh, I think he died again. There are EU servers that are up. Yes. Damn it, Drud is dead. Yeah, he'll be back in a minute or two. I'll be right back. Yeah, I'll take some time to answer a few questions that other people were asking while Drudly was talking. There are some EU servers that are up. This is currently my server. It's not going to be up 24/7. It'll probably end at the end of the stream.
All right, let's try that again. Where did I
Oh,
stop
there.
off at?
There you go. Hi.
Yeah. Where did I stop off at? When it comes to discussing what the worst part about development is.
I think it was right after you said like it was a bug and you have no idea where the bug was coming from, and it was...
Yeah. Okay. So I'll try to do like a shorter version of that. Some of the worst things are dealing with those kind of bugs that we don't know how to fix, and also scrapping certain things like game modes. Because there's been a lot of talk about VIP in the past, where like we were like, oh, this cannot work because payload exists, or so on and so forth. When both payload and VIP have their own differences, and VIP is very unique on its own, because no one makes VIP games anymore, like at all. Not in Overwatch, not in all these other TF2 clones. No one does that kind of thing. They just kind of stick with the safe side of like payload. But that's generally what I was saying. So TLDR, the worst things are generally dealing with either weird bugs or having to scrap something.
I think that was a very good... I'd say that went well.
I'm happy with having to answer it. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the things that were answered. I might sound like a broken record, but yeah, thank you so much for being on and answering a lot of these questions. TF2 Classic is awesome. A lot of people are loving it. And
good. But I'm thankful that the community is happy with the mod that they were given. I'm happy to have, been able to talk more about this, and I hope that more people understand where the development team is when it comes to certain things. And I hope more people are like, okay, well maybe we can give this team a little bit more leeway than getting on their back a little bit more. And obviously that kind of attitude towards us is justified when it comes to like dealing with delays, and there's nothing to stop people from thinking that kind of stuff. But yeah, I'm happy to have said what I said, and I hope people understand our team better. And I especially hope that they enjoy the mod for the next few months or years even. I mean, because we're still going to be making updates. We'll get there when we get there, but it shouldn't take full years. I hope not.
it definitely won't.
Yeah, it won't. Don't worry. These next few, I mean, we're gonna have hot fixes in the future, but then there'll also be, the big updates you'll see soon, eventually, obviously.
Well, everybody's gonna look forward to it. I'm sure a lot of people are gonna love Overpowered.
Oh, I cannot wait. I cannot wait to start work on Overpowered, because we have a lot of attributes we want to give to the henchmen that people are not expecting.
Well, don't spoil it.
I'm not. I'm just giving a little. I'm gonna give it a little salt to this little this steak of a conversation. We're spicing it up.
Little tease.
Yeah, gotta make sure people know that we know what the fuck we're doing. Obviously, I mean that in a joking way, but yeah, I cannot wait to start on the next thing for TF2C.
Well, that's great to hear. And I think with that, pretty sure we're gonna end this off here.
That sounds good. I'm. Ooh, hold on.
Yeah, no worry. I'm like the same way.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I mean, I'm happy to have been here because, I'm happy that some people have been able to hear what my thoughts have been, and yeah, this has been good.
Yeah, thank you. And if there's anything you want to clear up last minute, go ahead. Anything you want to say?
In terms of clearing anything up, I can't think of anything because I don't feel like there's much anything to clear up in my mind, at least. Aside from the fact that obviously there will be more updates in the future, that is heavy clarification.
There will be more updates. Let everyone know. From here to there will be more updates to Team Fortress 2 Classic.
Yep. And if you want to fact check that on me, get a fucking time machine, go to fucking 2025, and you'll have like a bunch of updates for Team Fortress 2 Classic. If you don't, we fucked up somewhere.
I'm sure we will. I'm sure there'll be
Yeah.
a lot of great things.
Yeah, of course. But yeah, it was nice being here.
Yeah, thanks for coming on again.
Yeah, thanks for making the opportunity for me.
Yeah, that's nice.
So I guess I'll call it here, and I'll press the red button.
Yeah, I'm gonna also press the red button. I'll talk to you later.
Talk to you later.
All right, see you, man.
See ya.
Oh! All right, now that Drudly's not here. Oh my God. He's probably in chat. Watch him be in chat. My God. What a lovely young man.